we're really pleased that they've come down from Salt Lake to be with us today. So don't forget, if you didn't already see the banner out in front, afterwards, as you leave the class, make sure you sign our banner saying that you're going to take the pledge to stand up to pornography. Now, I'm going to turn the time over to Tanner Linford. He's our student body president, vice president, and I'm going to introduce our speaker.
All right, Clay Olson is a passionate filmmaker, marketer, and entrepreneur, born and raised in northern Utah. He finds the most fulfillment in helping others, which is why he left a growing company and co-founded Fight the New Drug with a few like-minded friends. Since then, they've been featured on ABC Nightline, ABC News, CNN, and The Dr. Drew Show. Clay has visited over 250 schools and tens of thousands of teens all over the country. He passionately feels that education is the most powerful weapon to combat the influence of pornography in our society. Please join me in welcoming Clay Olson.
Okay, you guys hear me? You hear me? You hear me? Can we get the reverb by that? Guys, I'm so grateful to be here. I'm so glad that you guys brought us down here. Let's give a round of applause for the people that organized this whole event, this class, and June 1. I know that many of you are forced to be here for credit, and all of you, right? No, it doesn't matter. We're excited to be here and have this conversation for the next 4 hours. We're going to go into a lot of different things. I'm kind of just, now I honestly do wish we had that much to cover, but we're going to condense it down to just the time that we have in this class period. So, yeah, they mentioned it, not from too far away, pretty close, but we get to go around the country and spread message. Now let's talk about this message, because there's a lot that we could talk about, right? And we're going to dive into a lot of aspects, and you're probably going to have more questions and talk to us afterwards, or we can go to our website and more after as well. But if you forget everything that I talk about here today, and actually I have someone here with me. Stand up here, Craig. Craig's another one of our representatives here. Give him a round of applause. Craig's a new employee of Fight the New Drug, and he's going to be doing a lot of great work for us, and we're just excited to kind of see him part of the team now. But like I said, there's a lot that we can go to, and bottom line, if you forget everything that we've talked about, I hope that we can kind of leave with this understanding that pornography is in fact harmful, and science is now proving it. You see, this topic of pornography pornography's been around from the beginning, right? And so, but we didn't always know that it was harmful. And let's look at some other things in the past that we had to learn the hard way as well. And because we didn't always know a lot of things, and science always has to kind of catch up with that. For instance, check out this ad back in the late 1800s for cocaine toothache drops, right? I mean, this is an ad for literally kids if they had a toothache. How many of you have ever had a toothache in your life? Raise your hand. No fun. Can you imagine going to your doctor today and saying, dude, doc, I got this toothache. It's killing me. Give me something. And he's like, I got just the thing. Pulls out some cocaine, drops it on the table, and says, you're going to love this. It's going to make you forget the pain. It's going to make you forget you have teeth, right? It's going to be amazing. No, of course not. This wouldn't happen today. Why not? Why not? We're educated. We know better. We finally figured out that cocaine was super harmful. It could mess up your life, and it should cost more than 15 cents. We learned a few things. So we move on in history. But you know what? We learned the hard way yet again in our history back in the day with this. Check out this ad from nursing mothers with new babies, telling them that they should drink more alcohol so that the benefits of it would pass on through their body and onto the nursing child. What? Yeah, but that, back in the day, it was a real ad, and after seeing a bunch of drunken babies stumbling around mid-crawl, they were like, okay, get away with that. But it happened yet again in our history where science had to catch up with truth, and that happened with tobacco, right? We know a third grader could tell us otherwise today, but back in the day, doctors used to prescribe smoking tobacco as a way to soothe the nerves and clean out the lungs. What? But this is, again, we know better now. We're educated now. How many of you know this Dr. Raymond Pearl? Anybody? You know who that is? Dr. Raymond Pearl. I've actually done this presentation quite a few times, and I've never seen anyone know who Dr. Raymond Pearl is, so don't feel bad. Dr. Raymond Pearl was a researcher, professor at Johns Hopkins University back in the late 1930s, so 1938. This guy. Now, you should all know his name, because he was the first guy in history to connect the dots between smoking tobacco and lung cancer. And he figured it out. And that discovery, that light bulb in our history has, in time, saved millions and millions of lives, right? But he was the first man to figure it out. And what do you think happened after he figured this out? Do you think there were statues and parades and monuments dedicated to this guy? No. The Goliath at the time, the tobacco industry, squashed his research, and 4 years later he died, never saw the light of day. 15 years later, Reader's Digest came out with an article called Cancer, which was the first public attack against the tobacco industry, and that launched a 40-year debate on whether or not tobacco was in fact harmful, with millions and millions of dollars being poured into trying to convince the public that it was in fact fine, and it was okay, and it was healthy. Again, we know better now. That's in our past. We've learned our lesson. Science has caught up with truth in each one of those cases. Now, the reason I'm talking about those things is because we're in a similar learning experience regarding pornography. You see, back in the day, pornography was kind of a to each their own kind of a thing. You know, some people thought it was bad, you shouldn't get involved with it. Other people thought it was fine, it was no big deal, it was part of growing up. Not today. You see, today we now know through research and studies that pornography is harmful in three main areas, in three main ways. It impacts us as individuals. It impacts our brain. It impacts our heart. It impacts our world. And these are the three main areas, individually, relationally, and societally, that pornography is impacting us. And we have research to back all this up. This is now caught up with truth. But guess what? Even when science had figured it out back in 1938 for the tobacco, it took 40 years to catch up, and we're in that process of awareness. And pretty soon, years and years from now, you look back and say, remember when we thought pornography was no big deal? Oh, that's funny. Because more is coming out to help that out. Now, let's dig into this a little bit. Now, we started a campaign. I was in college at a different university. One that loves Snow College. I was up at college with some like-minded friends, and we saw the writing on the wall. We saw that this was a harmful thing, and we thought, and I personally had family members who had struggled with this, and even led them to prison because of the impact pornography had in their life. And so it was very kind of something that was very top of my life. It's something that I was very sensitive to, and kind of recognize that this was something that was affecting people in a very, very harmful way. But why aren't we talking about it? Why is this a topic that we shove under the rug and pretend it doesn't exist? Why is this not something that we are discussing in public forums and conversations? Well, it's difficult. It's not easy. And science or society is still catching up. But we decided, us four naive college students, we decided, let's do this. Let's change the conversation. Let's help bring this research to light in a way that's going to resonate with our generation. And so we did that. And we were naive to think that, we would start it, and, a couple weeks later, it would be, global change. And it was. No, just kidding. That's the cool thing. No. In 2008, and we've been going, and we've been kind of inching along, and how many of you, before coming here today, have heard of Fighting the Drug in Our Efforts? Raise your hand. Awesome. That's so cool. And we're seeing that, and I even see a couple, if you're wearing a Fight the Drug t-shirt or anything of ours, stand up. Stand up. I saw a few. There's like 3 here, right in front, right here. Give these people a round of applause right now. Well done. Thanks for repping, right? And supporting the cause and getting the word out, because that is our mission. We're just trying to bring the facts to light. We're not trying to limit the supply of it. We're trying to decrease demand through education. We're trying to help people make educated decisions on their own once they understand the facts. So let's dive into this a little bit. I do want to show you a quick video to kind of illustrate this, but But I'm gonna skip it. I apologize. We just are so short on time. I'm gonna skip it. You can go to our homepage on our website and watch that video that I was about to show, and a little bit about who we are. But we're gonna kind of go over some of those things, and so I feel okay about skipping it. Let's dive into the harmful effects of pornography and what this is. Let's talk about the brain first. Let's kind of dive into this. How many of you have heard? Now it's a lot of people have heard that it can be addictive. That viewing pornography can be addictive. Some of you have heard that, right? It's not as, when we started this, that was very, very, far fewer people had heard that. But because of the research that's been coming out and people talking about it, more people are aware of this. But let's talk about this. We get thousands and thousands of emails coming into our organization from people all over the world telling us a lot of things. Some of them are talking about their story and how it impacted them, and some people are just saying how they want to get involved and other things like that. But I wanted to share a few emails throughout the presentation that kind of illustrate some of these things. So the brain. This 16-year-old kid said, "My life now would have been much different if my father had understood that pornography was a true addiction and that just stop wasn't enough." Now that is a reoccurring thing that we hear in a lot of emails coming through. Because before, when people said, "Hey, I have a problem with pornography," it was kind of like, "Stop, quit it, you pervert. Stop it," right? And now we know more about the brain than we've ever known. We know more about addiction than we've ever known before. And we realize that this is very similar, has a lot of the same aspects when it comes to the addiction and when it comes to the brain as other addictions, to drugs and alcohol and other things like that. Let's talk about that. Let's kind of explore that. So let's kind of dive into the brain a little bit, and this is a kind of a depiction of the frontal lobes of the brain where we have our reward pathway in that frontal lobe area. How many of you have heard of the reward pathway in your brain? So the reward pathway is kind of what makes you feel good about doing things. It's the reward for doing something that kind of prolongs life, or food and other things like that. And so when you do something that you enjoy, something that you like, pleasure chemicals are released into the reward pathway of your brain, like dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. These things are released into the frontal lobes of your brain, the reward pathway, and it makes you feel good, and it makes you want to repeat that behavior. And that's what you like. So, and then when you're doing this same process occurs when you're doing not so cool stuff as well, like doing drugs. So, but the difference is that this part of the brain, the frontal lobes, the reward pathway, is hijacked when drugs are introduced or addictive behaviors are introduced, and all of a sudden this area is and overloaded with these same these same chemicals to the point where your brain literally starts to rewire itself and change and alter. And over time, you need more of what you've been feeding it more often and a more hardcore version. And this is the same process for any addiction. And that's the process of addiction. And so when we understand that, we start to understand a lot of other things that go along with that. In fact, one researcher, Valerie Voon, did a lot of research recently in Cambridge University. She found that the gray matter in the front of the brain actually can decrease in size, physically, in size, through prolonged or severe cases of addiction, any addiction. And she actually tested that to pornography addiction as well. So basically the frontal lobes of the brain can actually think through prolonged addiction. Now, how many of you want to see what that looks like, kind of a brain scan of what that looks like, to kind of see that comparison? Raise your hand if you want to see that. You guys are gross. No, just kidding. So check it out. It's kind of small in the back. You'll have to squint, but you can kind of see just in the front area of the brain just how kind of impactful this is to a brain. Serious stuff, guys. This is serious stuff. No, for real, where are the frontal lobes of the brain? Just like the name suggests, the frontal lobes of the brain are located right in the front part of the brain. This is where you make decisions. This is where you pros and cons and think through situations and scenarios and choose the course that best represents your desires. And this is the part of the brain that addiction impacts the most. This is the part of the brain that addiction harms the most. And so it's kind of understandable. It's like, oh, no wonder. No wonder addicts have a hard time stopping their unwanted behaviors even when they want to. Because the part of their brain that's supposed to kind of help them through that, kind of logically walk them through the course of action, has been altered, changed, rewired. And the longer that addiction has been set in, the more outside and oftentimes professional assistance is required to kind of help them overcome that. So again, we know that pornography is harming our brain. Again, this is Valerie Villain, the one I mentioned earlier. There are differences in brain activity between patients with compulsive sexual behavior and healthy peers. These differences mirror those of drug addicts. And she actually did do a real brain scan, so this isn't a joke, and this is showing healthy volunteers and compulsive pornography users. And that may not look like much, but it's an actual significant impact in that frontal lobe, that reward pathway of the brain that it's impacting. So again, we now know that pornography is harming our brains. But of course, this isn't the case for everybody that views pornography. Not everybody is going to become an addict. Not everybody is going to experience that. But there are a lot of things that this can lead to. It starts, but it also leads to a lot of other things. Let's talk about this next one, the heart. Do you think it's impacting relationships? Pornography, do you think it's impacting relationships? Why? I mean, shouldn't it be like helping relationships? Shouldn't it be like infusing love and kind of like promoting intimacy? Not so much. Not so much. And there's obvious as to why that is, and we don't have to go into those, but we'll talk about a few. We'll talk about a few reasons why this is impacting. And kind of talk about a couple of aspects, but here's a quote here that says, "Pornography has made me react positively to non-sexual sex and violence against women." Jamie, age 16. 30% of the emails coming into our organization asking for help are girls. This is not a male-specific issue. This is crossing all boundaries, and we could go into the history as to kind of what has aligned to kind of make that more the case in today's society. We don't have time, but this is a huge issue. And girls that are facing this think that they are the only ones in the world, and so the shame and the guilt is like off the charts. And what they don't realize is that there are many that are struggling just like they are. And the fact that this particular girl, age 16, was acting positively to non-consensual sex and violence against women. What? Are you kidding? How could she, especially she, be reacting positively to that, right? Well, okay, let's go back to the brain science, understand kind of how it's impacting the brain, and then let's talk about what that's leading to. And that kind of leads us to some of these areas to talk about. So let's talk about unrealistic expectations first. I'm going to tell you a little story. There's a guy by the name of Tim Burgeon, Dr. Tim Burgeon, study back in the day on some butterflies. I'll bring this around in a second. Study on butterflies. And he actually analyzed the markings on those female butterflies, on the female specifically, and which markings they were. And once he kind of figured that out, he decided to make his own cardboard versions of those butterflies. Except he made them more elaborate, more extreme, more colorful than nature would ever create, put them in an environment with both male and female butterflies. And guess what happened? The males exclusively tried to connect and mate with the cardboard decoys and ignored completely the real female butterflies that were in that environment along with them. Now, what does this have to do with pornography? Well, with pornography, everything from the way that people look to the reasons that they engage are just as fake and counterfeit as Tim Burgeon's cardboard butterfly wings. And just like those butterflies that were duped into connecting or trying to mate with those cardboard versions, many porn users find themselves obsessing with something that's not real and ignoring out and damaging the very real relationships around them in their lives. And that can lead to a lot of things, but let's talk about the disordered arousal template, which is kind of what that girl was talking about in her email. Disordered arousal template. What does that mean? Again, coming back to the brain science, we understand how this is impacting us, but once we understand this, we can kind of see, once we understand kind of where this is leading us, we can kind of start to see the deviance, the course that it's leading us down. Norman Deutsch said, "Sexual tastes are molded by individuals' experiences and their culture. These tastes are acquired and then wired into the brain. We are unable to distinguish our second nature from our original nature because our neuroplastic brains, meaning changeable brains, once rewired, develop a new nature, every bit as biological as our original." So again, as we kind of consume that material, how do you think that's impacting our views and attitudes on love, intimacy, healthy relationships? Here's another email we got from a kid that said, "Please help me. and desensitized by porn. The stuff I used to watch works. I now need violent fantasies. Please, I don't want to. Now that's again another common theme that we're seeing. They need more of it, more often, and a more hardcore version, just to experience the same high that they've been having, because their brain is becoming rewired and it requires that just to feel normal. So it's impacting that in a lot of ways. Here's an study on human butterflies, and she actually did a study. Kind of wanted to see how this is impacting. So she gathered two groups of individuals. One, she exposed to pornography on a regular basis. And this study was deemed too harmful to the participants that they actually banned it once it was completed for any future research like this at that university. But they grabbed two groups of people, showed one of them pornography and the other they didn't. And the ones that were exposed to pornography, like without question, without doubt, experiences severe decrease in satisfaction with real relationships. So bottom line is people start to prefer the fantasy to reality. Start to prefer the pixels on the computer screen to a human. And we had a friend, her name is Maria, who experienced this firsthand. Check it out.
When I started being sort of exposed to pornography, it wasn't in a lock your door, make sure no one's at home kind of way. You know, it wasn't really secretive and hidden. I didn't really feel bad about it. You know, I didn't feel like I was doing something wrong. And people were always sort of surprised, you know, especially like other women, like, oh, I can't believe you let your husband do that. And I'd sort of think, let him do that. We're both doing that. I didn't see it coming almost. Like I didn't know that porn was capable of ruining a relationship. I realized that you both would rather look at a computer screen. Don't even want to be with each other. It's really bad. I've always enjoyed the intimate part of a relationship. I've always enjoyed with another person, and the fact that for me that went away was, oh man, it blindsided me. Oh, it was heartbreaking. You know, it robbed us. It totally robbed us. I had no idea that we had like this poisonous ingredient in our marriage. You know, that there was something else that was, you know, spoiling us right out. I mean, there was no way we were ever gonna fix anything if we hadn't, you know, ever tackled that problem. I had a lot of, you know, religious friends or people that would tell you like morally, don't do it, it's wrong. But I was a big girl. I always felt like I was very capable of making up my own mind, and it wasn't until I actually learned the physical, scientific effects of pornography that it all came full circle for me, and it all came clear. All of a sudden I could understand why I got rejected when I tried to initiate physical contact, why we didn't talk, why we both turned to pornography instead of each other. I mean, I'm a living, breathing example of the pure science facts.
Place, thank goodness. But her ex-husband and partner is still struggling. And it's kind of sad to see that, right? Here's a healthy relationship, a marriage, a great union. How many of you hope to someday maybe want to get married? Or are, right? How many of you hope they maybe want to go on a date? Yeah, I know. Some of you are like, no way. No. You know, connection, connectivity, love, acceptance, these are all things we crave and we need. And I cannot think of a single thing that is more toxic in that environment than pornography. It is the third wheel in a relationship that always wins. Don't bring it in. We have a campaign that we launched kind of called Porn Kills Love. I showed a few of you that are wearing the today. We push this, and we have thousands and thousands of people from all over the world, you know, posting them in their shirts in different environments in the world, and on Instagram, on Facebook, and it's cool to see young people rallying behind this. And some of you might be thinking, well, why are you talking to young people? I mean, this is an adult issue, right? I mean, adults struggle because they're the ones in the relation, they're the ones that are married, and, if they're in a marriage, they shouldn't be looking at that stuff. Young people, they're not exposed to this, right? Well, you know better, right? Parents sometimes question that, but you guys know better. This is an issue that is impacting emails from 8-year-olds looking for help. Wrap your brain around that. These are not just 8-year-olds that have been exposed. They're 8-year-olds that have been exposed to a degree that they think they have a problem. They go online to look for an organization to help them on their own. And we've had a lot of 8-year-olds contact us. In fact, I was doing a presentation in a middle school, and we adjust our presentation to accommodate for the ages. And we were doing a presentation, I don't remember where we were in the United States, but we were doing a presentation for a middle school. And there was a little 6th grade girl in the front, tiny little girl. I mean, she's petite, and I'm thinking, okay, a lot of people have probably been exposed, thank you. But she, she's for sure hasn't been exposed to this, so it's good to just kind of inform her on some of these dangers. And she was like with me the whole time. She's like nodding her head, like whispering, like, yes, yes. I'm like, wow, she's into this. Awesome, future fighter. I get done with the presentation, I go sit down, and the principal's kind of wrapping things up, and that little girl came up right behind the principal and ran up over to me. And with tears in her eyes, and with a trembling hand, she said, thank you so much. I've been struggling with this for a very long time, and I didn't know what to turn to, and now I can beat this. And I was like, whoa. Now, it wasn't shocking that she came to talk to me, because that happens all the time in presentations. It was shocking that this was a little petite, little 6th grade girl. Again, this is hitting as young and it's hitting everyone. The demographics of drug addicts, you could kind of say, well, it's this kind of a whatever, but with pornography, it infiltrates every boundary, every economic positioning, everything. So let's move on. Let's talk about how this is impacting our world and our society. And this is where I get passionate on each one of these, but this is one that hits me really hard, and I get kind of this affects me a lot. So when we talk about the world, we kind of look at this and say, well, my parents don't know how bad. I think porn is just naked people. Today, porn is much worse than people with no clothes. I was doing a presentation at ASU in Arizona, and a kid came up, he was a freshman in college. He came up after, and we were talking about the definition of pornography, and he said, now wait a second. Playboy's not porn, is it? And I was like, oh, interesting. Interesting, because if I were to ask his parents or your parents what the iconic symbol of pornography is, then it would be a bunny, right? That's their version of pornography. And today, most kids your age and younger don't even consider it to be pornography. We talk about the prevalence of pornography all the time, the availability, the acceptance, how it's just walking around in your pocket at any moment. But one thing we forget to say is that the very nature has changed. And in my book, that is the more scary of the two. Okay, and that the combination is a cocktail for some troubles. Now, we talk about this, and there's a study. Anna Bridges did this very study again. She analyzed 304 of the most popular film scenes, pornographic film scenes in the most popular porn films that were released in 2012. She found that 88% of the material found in those films were physically violent against women. Whoa! Wrap your brain around that. 88% of the most popular porn films, and not dark corner stuff, not like hard to find on the internet. This is the most popular stuff on the internet in 2012. 88% was found to have physical violence against women. Who's watching this stuff? Millions and millions of people are watching this on a daily basis. And very young people are watching this on a daily basis. And they don't have context, right? I mean, this is dangerous for anybody to view that kind of material, but it's especially harmful for young adults to be viewing that because they don't have context. They think that is normal, that is healthy. And I could show you a newspaper clipping after newspaper clipping of young kids getting arrested for very violent and aggressive sexual things to to somebody on their first date or to somebody that they saw because they thought, well, that's what I thought they wanted that. I thought they liked that. And really warping our arousal templates, right? And this is really changing the way that we look at one another and changing the way that we see intimacy and love. This is not about kind of personal preference. This is about a public concern. Now, we have a friend, I actually met this woman in D.C. She allowed me to create her story in this video that I'm going to show you next, but she wouldn't allow me to use her face because she's still concerned and fearful that her kidnappers will find her. But she was kidnapped. This is not, over in some third world country. This is here in the United States, kidnapped and forced into sex slavery for many years of her life. And this is her story. Check it out.
To say that there are victims and survivors who have been drugged and forced into this ugliness against their wills. I realize that this statement flies in the face of the mainstream mono-thought, stereotypical mentality that porn is something that women choose, or that she likes it, she asked for it, she chose it. Although that might be true for many are coerced into agreeing with whatever our pornographer says just to stay alive. I was drugged before each filming. Sometimes it was with an amnesiac, sometimes with a paralyzing drug, sometimes with pain blockers, sometimes a crazy combination of all of them. We lie to cover up the truth. We do not have the words to speak out because our pain is too graphic, and it's next to impossible to describe what happened to us. We're met with dismissals and denials. I'm here to tell you, some of us have succumbed to more drug addictions, some to insanity, some to crippling isolation, and some even to death.
When you hear that, how does that make you feel when you hear that story? Horrible, sick, right? Angry. These are the feelings that I had, and we get emails like this, and people reaching out to us a lot, sadly, telling us what's really going on in the industry. And here's the thing, I get asked to speak at anti-porn conferences all the time, but I'm starting to be asked, and a lot of times, to be asked to go speak at anti-sex trafficking conferences. And a lot of times, I'll tell you, those are two separate industries. People kind of treat them separately, and it's two separate issues. But I'm here to tell you that they are so interconnected that it will shock you. What we are learning is that most of what the sex slaves are forced into doing is porn. Because the traffickers can make way more money in filming it and reselling it, and they don't age, they don't have all those other issues. They can kind of just encapsulate that moment. And so the sex traffickers are realizing that is where they can make the most money. So much, and we had a woman tell us that there was a gun off camera pointed at her head, telling her that if she didn't make it look like she was agreeing to this, and it was consensual, that they would kill her. So much of what we're watching, we don't know, might be involving, in more cases than we think, might be involving people that are not agreeing to that. They didn't choose that. They didn't want to be there. They were forced. And people all over the country, millions of people, are viewing that, thinking that, oh, well, it's just a personal choice. But for me, that's not okay. That's not cool. I'm not going to support that. How many of you don't support violence against women? Raise your hand. Don't support it, right? I don't want to ask the reverse of that. So just how many of you are on board with, it's not cool to be violent and aggressive in that way? Not cool, right? And yet this is what people are consuming on a daily basis, thinking, oh, it's fine, it's just that. That's not my real life. I wouldn't do that to a real person. But as we understand the brain, and we understand that you need more of it more often and a more hardcore version, the more we realize that we have to kind of eventually get to that to find that satisfaction. Now we know that pornography not only impacts our brain, it impacts our heart, it impacts our world. How many of you are on board with kind of spreading that education? How many of you are kind of with us, kind of say, this isn't cool, I don't support this, and others should know that? Raise your hand if that's you. Hey, let me hear you. Let's say something here. Let's go clap or something. I don't know, anything. Let's get on board, yeah. That's great. The truth is that we need you. We need you to kind of bring this to the next generation, to your peers, to others, to help them understand what's really going on here. And let them make a personal and educated decision. Now, we talked about the content that is out there today. It's more aggressive, more violent, more harmful than ever before in the history of the world. Your generation and the generations behind you are dealing with this like no other generation before you, period. This is a challenge. The tidal wave that is about to hit our society is 2 miles out. We're experiencing the harmful effects today, but as soon as those young kids, this generation grows up to be the decision makers, the lawmakers, the judges, that's when we're going to start to feel the real impact. And we've got to make a change. And if we don't, this material is changing the way that we view intimacy and love and say, it's cool, it's harmless, porn's harmless, it's natural to kind of do that thing and view that kind of material. And that's, of course, changing our world. And I believe, and I've dedicated my life to this, that it doesn't have to be that way. I believe that we have the responsibility to change this. And if we don't, we're kind of going down this downward spiral, and it's going to get far worse and worse and worse. Like I said, the tidal wave, that's 2 miles out. But if we make a change, if we make a personal decision to kind of say, no, that's not cool, that's harmful, it'll start to change the way that we and others view this material, thinking it's not cool, it's not fine, it's not normal. And that will in turn change our world. I know it sounds grandiose, but we can do it. And again, we have to do it. And we dedicate our life to this. Now, if you're on board with this mission, if you're down with this message, we need you now more than ever, right? We need you to kind of join the cause and be a part of it. We need you to get educated. And it starts with this, but this is the tip of the iceberg. Go to our website, fightthenewdrug.org, and others to continue becoming educated. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram and other ways that we can kind of start to spread that information to you so that you can help others understand it as well. Join the movement, be a part of it, and more importantly, and most importantly, spread the message. Get others involved. Get others to understand what we're talking about here. Now, I have a few minutes left. Is that right? I have 10 minutes left. So I would like to, I was able to, I skipped a couple of things earlier, but I'm not going to go back to those. So I was able to speed it up enough so I have a little bit of time. I'd like to open it up to some questions. But before I do that, I want to tell you about one resource, okay? And that resource is called Fortify. Now, I told you that we get thousands and thousands of emails coming into our organization asking for help. What can you do? I love the cause, I love the movement, I love the message, but I need help. Where do I go? And some of them are young enough where they don't have a credit card and they don't dare get parental consent. So what do? Well, they did nothing before, and we said as a society, we said, well, wait in that dark corner until it's worse and you have a credit card, then come talk to us and we'll help you. Well, we didn't think that was okay. So a few years back, we decided to create our own program. We gathered a team of professionals in neuroscience and psychology and content creation and development, and we put hundreds of thousands of dollars into developing what we call the Fortify program. And the Fortify program is an online program that walks you through and gives you tools and resources and education and gives you tips on how to overcome and how to beat your addiction to pornography. And it's video-based and it's dynamic. Now, we have an adult and a teen version of that program. And we have not done a single lick of advertising other than this kind of advertising, like speaking from on a stage. And we've already had over 15,000 people register for the program in a very short, less than a year of operation. So if you or someone you know is struggling with this, the more we know about it, the more we realize that this is something that requires oftentimes professional help, someone to help you through that. If you need help or you know someone needing help, you can turn to a lot of things, a lot of people that want to help you succeed, a lot of people that would be willing to be in your corner. But if you can't turn to anybody, at least turn to us. At least get that help, okay? And it's a free resource for teens. It's free for adults. 20 years and older, we ask for a one-time fee. But for teens, it's free. And again, we're very excited about that product and kind of the development and the direction that that's going. And in tandem with Fight the New Drug and the movement, we feel like we can really make a difference with your help. So thank you so much for having me. I appreciate all your time. Are there, and if there are not, If there are not, that's totally fine. But are there any questions about anything that we learned, or about the organization, how we got started, anything? Anyone? Saw a hand. Yes, right there.
So as a mom, is there something on this program to help, if your children don't have a problem with it yet?
Yeah, the prevention thing? Yeah, so we have a product called the Parent's Guide. It's something that's a free download from our website, and it kind of helps you understand that. We also do a parent presentation that walks you through some of those things, but since we're not doing that today and you live down here, I would say that the Parent Guide is the easiest thing to go after, and that's just off of our store on our website, fightthenewdrug.org. Any other questions? Yeah, way back there. They can? Yeah. Yeah.
What is a good way to get endorphins and stuff without that masturbation and pornography?
Without that release? That's a good question. There aren't any patches for that I'm aware of. That'd be a pretty interesting patch. You'd probably make a lot of money if you make it. No, there is a gum though. No, just kidding. I'm not aware of anything of that nature. You know what? We talk about this in the Fortified program, and a lot of therapists that we engage with a lot of times it's honing off of that and building up connections and kind of building off of kind of natural highs that your everyday life can provide, and kind of really focusing on those connectability aspects of relationships and having that replace that need. Because oftentimes people turn to pornography because they feel like they're missing something. They're missing, either acceptance or love, or sometimes they need stimulus. And a lot of times that can be replaced with something far more impactful and far more healthy. And so, but I'm not aware of any gum or patch. That'd be interesting. Any other questions? Yes, way in the back, in the booth. Yes.
Drug, and I do kind of know some of the presentations. I've seen some of these before. But this exact presentation, is there a place where it can be viewed?
This exact presentation, I could give you some. I could get you something if you want to email me personally. I'll just throw this out there at clay@fightthenewdrug.org or info@fightthenewdrug.org. I can send that to you, but we don't have it recorded or anything like that. We are working on some materials that will be able to be disseminated much more easily. We're working on a documentary 3-part series that will kind of be able to encapsulate a lot of what we're talking about here in a more dynamic way. So that will be coming in the coming months, but for now, I could send you some stuff. Are we on YouTube? Yes, we are on the YouTubes. We have a YouTube channel. Yeah, follow us. We have a lot of videos on there. We continue to post on there. We have a strong blog. Some of you have maybe seen some of those things, and Facebook, Instagram. We're very active on social media. And again, our purpose on social media is to help you, to give you the tools to be able to spread the message, and spread conversation and dialogue. And so we want to write things and give you things that you can kind of say, hey, check this out. Let's change the conversation. We want to change it from dude, check this out, to dude, that's messed up, right? And we need you to help us. Any other questions? Yeah, right here. Maybe I don't understand your question. So how can we combat this nonviolently? Like the issue, the cause? Yeah. So maybe I'm not understanding your question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but education. I mean, we are not out there to take down the porn industry. That is not our motive. I know that there are groups out there kind of going after that legislatively and going after that and maybe going violently. I don't know. But for us, we are about education. We want people to have the facts and let them choose for themselves. And so when we talk about this, and when we say, how do we fight the new drug, it is totally through education and disseminating knowledge. If we can get to a point as a society where we walk down and talk to a third grader, and the third grader knows, kind of like we did with tobacco, where like anybody off the street knows that it's harmful, we have accomplished our mission. That's our goal. It's going to still exist. We're not naive to think that we're going to get rid of this thing. It's going to exist, but we want people to participate in it knowing. There are people that still smoke. And you ask them, hey, do you know that that's harmful? And they're like, yeah, I know. Right? And so we're not trying to change their personal decisions. We're trying to help them understand that it's harmful. Does that make sense? Anybody else? Yes. The documentary series. Yeah, so we're going to be creating a documentary series called Brain, Heart, World, which is going to be episode 1 is about the brain, episode 2, the heart, episode 3, the world. And it's going to be about half-hour piece. And we're in production right now in episode 1. And they're going to be mostly leveraged in kind of in school settings and in kind of community group settings and college campuses. But we should be done with those. We're putting $1 million into the development of these this series, and so it's going to be quite good, we believe. But and it's going to be quite powerful. Not everyone can afford us to come out and do a presentation in front of them, and so this documentary series will be able to kind of spread the message far greater than we can do face to face. That will be coming out by May. We should have episode 1 finished, and by about January of next year, we should have episodes 2 and 3 finished, and then it'll be a package deal. Any other questions? Yeah, on the corner.
So, kind of comparing pornography to, say, drugs or alcohol, there are people like, say, the one that's kind of extreme you're showing here with the relationship.
Yes.
Can pornography be a responsible, like, you can go about it responsibly?
Is there a healthy version of viewing pornography?
There might be a couple that they drink together, alcohol, not alcoholics, and they are fine their whole life.
Yeah, so I'm super glad you brought this up. So a lot of people kind of say, well, you know, like alcohol can be really harmful, and you can drink alcohol and it can really mess up your life, and there's stories of alcoholics that just go off the deep end and it ruins their life, right? But there are also a lot of responsible drinkers and, you know, that drink, you know, here and there, and it doesn't affect their life, and it's very positive. Here's the difference. So on a neurological level, if we're talking about the brain, you're absolutely right. They are very similar. Pornography is addictive, like in similar ways to alcohol. Not everyone's going to become an addict, neurologically. The difference here is that, so it's not necessarily more addictive or whatnot, but the difference here is what alcohol does not promote and educate or kind of sway attitudes and perceptions about the people around them. It doesn't promote kind of ideals or kind of shift the attitudes about sex and intimacy and love, whereas pornography absolutely has that impact. Just like Norman Deutsch said, kind of what we view and what we intake actually shifts and alters the way that we view those around us and connect with others. And as we consume that, just like Maria, and this is actually in many ways across the board, we're seeing this come up more and more, individuals are finding themselves kind of preferring that because it's easier, it doesn't take as much work and whatnot, preferring the computer screen to a human being. So on a neurological, just on the neurological level, it is addictive like unto pornography or alcohol, but on the relational side, or what it's educating, what it's teaching us, that's the greater impact. That's the more damage. That combination is a lot more harmful. Right. There's that as well. Any other questions? One last question, then we're done, or are we done? Done? Okay, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.